He was inside me before either of us could speak. His breath shook against my collarbone. I felt it hit in short bursts, uneven, panicked. Not because he was scared of me, but because he couldn't believe I was letting him. His hand gripped my hip too tight, like if he let go, I'd vanish. His other hand was flat on the bed beside my head, shaking under his weight. He moved slow at first, then slower, like he didn't trust his own body, like he needed me to ground him. I looked up at him, sweat already running down the side of his jaw, eyes clenched shut, and I could feel the second he lost control. His rhythm faltered, body stiffening, the tremble turning to a shudder that worked its way through his spine. I thought he'd stop, thought he'd pull back in shame, but I reached for him, slid my hand over the back of his neck, and whispered, "It's okay." And he broke. He sank deeper, softer. His arms shook harder. I felt his weight collapse into me, and I didn't pull away. Not once. I wrapped my legs around him and held him through it like it wasn't the worst mistake of my life, because in that moment, it didn't feel like one. It felt like something I'd been waiting for, dreading, needing. I never imagined I'd cross this line. Not with him. Not with someone I was supposed to protect. Not with someone who used to sit at my kitchen counter after school with a bowl of cereal and ask for help with his college essays. I'm 42, married. 2 sons, one in college, the other finishing high school. I bake. I teach part-time. I serve on the parent committee at church. I keep receipts. I keep promises. But I didn't keep this one. His name is Ryan. 24, my former student. My son's old best friend. I tutored him when he was 17. Awkward, too tall, too quiet. His mother used to joke he had no idea how to talk to girls. I'd tell her he'd grow into himself. I never expected to see what he'd grow into. I didn't plan to stay close after he graduated. But then he'd come around holidays, breaks, backyard cookouts. And each year he came back taller, steadier, quieter. He started helping with errands when my husband's work schedule got heavy. Fixing things around the house. Replacing light bulbs without being asked, carrying bags without making a scene. I told myself it was gratitude. He'd say things like, "I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't helped me back then." And I'd smile, brush it off, pretend the warmth I felt in my chest wasn't crossing a boundary. Then one night I opened the door, and he wasn't a boy anymore. He was standing there in a fitted black shirt, hands in his jacket pockets, hair wet from the rain. He'd just gotten back into town. Said he missed the food, missed the quiet, said he missed me. We sat on the couch, talked about his job, his new apartment, the people he'd grown apart from. He didn't say my son's name once. When I stood to grab his plate, he followed me into the kitchen. And when I turned, he was standing too close. I could have moved. I should have. Instead, I looked up and said, "You've changed." He looked at me, breath short. "You haven't." I didn't realize I was still holding the dish towel until it dropped to the floor. He bent to pick it up, then stopped halfway and whispered, "You taught me everything back then. I don't think you knew how much." I stood frozen. My heart slammed hard against my ribs, and before I could respond, he stepped back. "I should go," he said. "I'm sorry." I didn't stop him. But I didn't sleep that night either. 2 weeks later, I saw him again at the store. I'd gone in for milk. He was by the deli. He looked at me like nothing had changed, like everything had. He walked me to my car, carried the bag, stood there in the cold, and asked, "Do you ever think about it?" I said. "About what?" He looked down, shook his head. "Never mind." I said nothing. That night he texted, "I know I'm not supposed to, but I can't stop thinking about you." I didn't respond. Until the next night. Then stop coming around. He didn't, and neither did I. Tonight it happened. In my guest room. Door shut. Lights low. After my husband left for his out-of-town shift, and the boys were with their uncle for the weekend, he showed up, said he was just passing by. I let him in. We didn't talk long. I reached for his jacket. He stepped out of his shoes. His hands shook when they touched my waist, but he didn't pull back. Not this time. He moved like someone still learning, with hesitation, with awe, and I realized I was teaching him again. Only now the lesson would cost me everything. What would you do if the one person you were supposed to protect was the one you ended up craving in secret? Because I didn't just let him inside me. I held him there. If you've ever lived with a secret that made you ache and burn at the same time, this story might speak to you more than you'd like. Please like and subscribe. The more you watch, the more stories like this will find others holding back the same truth. Let's begin. The morning after I couldn't feel my feet on the kitchen tile, I poured coffee, added too much creamer, and didn't notice until the first sip nearly made me gag. I dumped it out and made another pot like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just walked out of my guest room an hour ago, shoes in hand, hoodie half zipped, mumbling something I didn't quite catch, like I hadn't held on to him until the trembling in his arms finally stopped, like I hadn't kissed the top of his head when he dropped it to my chest and whispered, "I didn't mean to need this." My husband called while I was wiping the counter, asked if I could send a photo of a tax form. He was calm. His voice was familiar, soft around the edges, like it always had been when he was distracted. I sent the photo. We said goodbye. I hung up and leaned against the fridge until the cold steel bit through my shirt. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. Ryan was a guest in our home more times than I could count. He and my son practically grew up under the same roof. Backyard birthday parties, Xbox tournaments, nights he'd crash on the couch with an old blanket and a box of cereal still open beside him. I used to help him with math, with grammar, with college applications. Now I was remembering the feel of his mouth at my collarbone, the way he trembled when he slid into me, like he thought I'd stop him, the way I didn't. I thought distance would fix it, that I'd feel sick in the light of day, that the weight of what I'd done would smother the memory. But it didn't. It made it worse, because I didn't feel shame. I felt hunger. Ryan didn't text me the next day, or the one after. He didn't have to. I saw his silence for what it was, guilt clawing its way through his spine, the way mine did. I folded towels. I meal prepped. I stayed busy. But the second I walked past the guest room, I remembered how he said my name quiet, like it hurt to say it out loud. By the third day, I cracked. I sent one message, "Are you okay?" He responded almost immediately. I keep replaying it. I don't know what I was thinking. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, then typed, "You weren't alone in it." He didn't reply after that. That night I stayed up past midnight, sitting on the bathroom floor, back against the tub, trying to remember the last time I let someone touch me without guilt already in my veins. My husband and I hadn't been close in nearly 3 years. Not in any real way. Not in a way that made me feel like a person. We were fine. That's what I always told people. We functioned. We showed up. But when Ryan's hand brushed mine, tentative, reverent, I felt more seen in that moment than I had in the last decade of my marriage. It wasn't lust. Not just. It was something quieter, sadder. Something I didn't have language for anymore. I met Ryan when he was 17. He was shy, lanky. His eyes darted around the room like he was always 2 steps behind a conversation. His mother had begged me to help him pass senior English. We'd sit at the dining table twice a week, and I'd teach him to write his way through his thoughts, not around them. He'd listen so carefully. He never forgot what I told him, not even the small things. And maybe that's when it started. Not a feeling, not attraction, just awareness. That rare, haunting realization that someone sees you without even knowing what they're looking at. He grew up, filled out, found his voice, but he never stopped looking at me like that. Like I was still the only person who ever told him he was smart. Even after he left for college, he'd stop by on breaks, bring cookies, fix things without asking, always sitting in the same chair, always asking about my day before I asked about his. It wasn't until this last visit now, that he was older, settled working, that the shift became impossible to ignore. He asked if he could stay a few days before moving into his new place, said he needed time to get his lease finalized. My husband didn't blink. Said sure. Why not? He stayed in the guest room, helped with dinner, laughed with my son, was polite, careful, and then one night he stayed up late reading on the back porch. I brought him tea, sat beside him. I don't know what made me ask. What do you remember about those tutoring sessions? He looked over, surprised, thought for a minute. You never made me feel dumb, he said. That was new. I smiled. You were never dumb. You just needed time. He took the mug from my hand. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Did you know back then how I felt? My stomach dropped. No, I said. Then softly, maybe, a little. He looked down. I used to dream about sitting that close to you, and not having to pretend it didn't mean anything. The silence swallowed us. I didn't say stop. I didn't move away. He kissed me first, and I let him. After that night on the porch, after the kiss, I didn't sleep. I kept waiting for the shame to hit full force. It didn't. Not in the way I expected. The worst part was how easy it was to slip back into normal. Morning coffee, folded laundry, my son back from a weekend trip, my husband asking what was for dinner, Ryan still in the house like nothing had changed. He didn't touch me, didn't even look at me too long. But something had shifted under the surface between us and me. Everything we didn't say stretched tight, like a cord between two buildings pulled and pulled and pulled, waiting to snap. I thought he might avoid me. I almost wanted him to. But then I caught him in the laundry room, folding one of my son's shirts. He looked up and froze. I didn't mean for that to happen, he said. On the porch. I know. But I don't regret it. My hand was on the dryer door. I didn't meet his eyes. That doesn't make it right. I'm not trying to make it right. He stepped back before I could say anything else. Left the room. Left me standing there, holding a wet sock and a throat full of heat. The next few days were quieter. We passed each other in the hallway, shared small talk at dinner. My husband didn't notice anything because I was still doing everything right, still smiling, still making sure his travel mug was filled before he left in the morning. But I was unraveling, and Ryan knew it. One afternoon I found a note tucked under the edge of the coffee pot, just a torn piece of paper folded once. Do you remember what you said when I couldn't write my college essay? I unfolded it fully. The handwriting was still familiar. You said, just tell the truth, even if it hurts. Underneath that, I'm trying. Even now. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He already knew I remembered. That night, my husband went to bed early. I stayed up pretending to answer emails. I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, coming from the hall. Ryan stood at the kitchen threshold, barefoot, arms folded. He didn't come closer. I'm leaving in a few days, he said. I nodded. That's probably a good idea. He didn't move. You never answered me. About what? About what it meant to you. That night. That kiss. I closed my laptop. Do we have to talk about it? No. But I think you want to. I looked at him then. Really looked. The way he was holding his breath. The way his fingers kept flexing against his arm, like he didn't know what to do with them. I wish I could say it meant nothing I said, but that would be the worst kind of lie. He took one small step forward. I've never wanted something this badly, and hated myself for it at the same time. I nodded. Welcome to adulthood. He laughed, quiet pained. I've had feelings before, he said, but never like this. Not something that keeps me up at night. My voice came out hoarse. You should try being the one who has everything to lose. He stared at me. Then why didn't you stop it? I don't know. I shook my head. I really don't. Silence settled. We were only a few feet apart, but it felt like miles. He turned to leave, but paused. Sometimes I still hear your voice in my head, he said. From years ago, when you'd say things like, don't rush it, or breathe through it. You probably don't remember half of what you said, but I do. I gripped the edge of the table. He added, that voice still gets me through some days. Then he walked away. The next day we almost crossed the line again. It was raining hard. Power had gone out for a moment, and I lit candles in the living room. My son was out. My husband was on shift. Ryan was in the guest room, and I was curled up with a blanket when he walked in holding his phone. No signal, he said. It is dead out there. He sat on the other end of the couch. We didn't talk. The thunder rumbled once close. I shifted to say something, and my foot brushed his leg. He didn't move. I let my knee stay there, barely touching his. He turned slowly, looked at me. I didn't come here for this, he said softly. I didn't mean to want it. I should have said me neither, should have laughed it off. But I just looked at him. Quiet, honest. He leaned in halfway and stopped. Tell me to go. I can't, I whispered. He didn't kiss me. Not then. He just nodded, pressed his forehead to mine, just for a moment. Then he stood, walked out of the room without another word, and I sat there, in the glow of candlelight. Breath held every nerve screaming with what didn't happen. We almost broke again. We almost gave in. But that moment, that almost, was somehow worse than any kiss, because now we both knew it wasn't just a mistake. It was going to happen again. It happened 2 nights later. I was folding towels again, same quiet motion, same hum of the dryer. The door to the guest room was cracked just enough for the hallway light to hit the floor. I should have turned around. I should have gone to bed. But I didn't. I walked past, slowly paused. Then I knocked, barely. Ryan opened the door already in a t-shirt and sweatpants. His hair was damp from the shower. He looked younger in that moment. Vulnerable. Like he hadn't slept either. I can't keep circling this, I whispered. It's messing with my head. His eyes searched mine. So stop circling. I stepped inside. He didn't reach for me, not at first. He waited. I was the one who crossed the space between us. I touched his face. His cheek was warm stubble, rough against my palm. He closed his eyes like that alone unraveled him. I shouldn't be here, I said. I know. I'm not leaving. I know. And then we moved, slow, unsure breath, catching in our throats, like we didn't know how to do this without shame trailing behind every touch. He kissed me like he was afraid he'd do it wrong. I kissed him like I needed to erase the distance I had let build up for too many years. When our clothes came off, it wasn't frantic. It wasn't lust. It was something else worse, heavier. Like we were undressing more than just skin. Like we were peeling back the years of silence and want and aching restraint that had built up between us. His body trembled as he lowered himself onto me. Not from fear, from emotion, from weight, from too many nights where neither of us said what we really felt. His rhythm was careful at first, staggered. I could feel him adjusting with each breath, each shift of his hips, trying to find a pace that didn't betray how badly he needed it. I guided him without words, my hands around his arms, my breath matching his. When he moved deeper, his whole frame shivered. "I'm sorry," he whispered, face buried against my shoulder. "Don't be," I murmured. "Not tonight." He kissed me there once, then again. His hands tightened around my waist, like he thought I'd pull away. But I didn't. I arched into him, let him press all the way in, let him find a rhythm again this time, slower, steadier. The sounds between us filled the room, breath skin, the faint creak of the bed. No moans, no cries, just quiet surrender. He clung to me like he'd fall apart without the anchor of my body. And I held him, because I needed it too. When it ended, he didn't roll away. He stayed inside me, chest rising against mine, breath still shaky. "I don't want this to ruin you," he said softly. I ran my fingers through his hair. "It already has," I said. "But not in the way you think." He raised his head, eyes glazed and red. "I used to imagine this," he said. "Not like this, not with the guilt, but just being with you, being enough for you." "You shouldn't be," I said. "But I am," he said, "just for tonight." And that's what it was. Not a confession, not a promise, just tonight. He pulled the blanket over us. I stayed, not because I didn't know better, but because for the first time in years I felt wanted, really wanted, not out of routine, not from obligation, but from the slow burn of someone who had waited too long. I watched him sleep, one arm over his chest, brow still tense, like he was dreaming hard. I memorized the lines of his face, the curve of his mouth, the sound of his breath against my neck, because I knew it couldn't happen again. It had taken too much already. But I also knew I wouldn't forget it. Not the way he shook the first time he moved inside me. Not the way I taught him again how to find his pace. Not the way I felt his body quiet the second I said, "It's okay." It wasn't okay. Nothing about it was okay. But it was ours. And in that moment, that was enough. The morning after, I stood at the sink rinsing plates that weren't dirty. I had barely slept, maybe 2 hours at most, and I'd gotten up before the sun just to keep from having to see him first. The house was still. My son hadn't come down. My husband was gone again, on another long-haul job. It should have felt familiar. It didn't. I caught my reflection in the window above the sink and barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because something inside me had shifted. Something permanent. Ryan came down late. His hair was messy, his sweatshirt wrinkled. He paused in the doorway, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there anymore. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. He cleared his throat. "I can make breakfast." I shook my head. "No. You should go." His silence pressed against my back like weight. "Is that what you want?" I turned slowly. His eyes were bloodshot. His jaw clenched. "I don't know what I want," I said. "But I know what we did doesn't just disappear." He stepped forward. "You think I'm proud of this. I'm not. But I'm not sorry either. I've wanted to be close to you for so long, I don't even know how to pretend anymore. And what am I supposed to do with that?" I snapped. "Keep sneaking around every time the house is empty. Live in this guilt and pretend it's normal, no." He looked down. "But I can't pretend you didn't change me." That hit harder than it should have. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out the folded note I'd left on his pillow that night. Just one line, "I shouldn't have let it happen. But I don't regret it." He unfolded it like it meant something sacred. "I know you're trying to be strong," he said, "but we're past that now." He turned and left. Quiet. No anger. No drama. Just gone. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I stood there with the faucet still running, hands shaking, breath stuck behind my ribs. Later that week, I saw him again. I was leaving the grocery store, and he was parked across from me. Our eyes met through windshields. He didn't wave. I didn't smile. But we looked. Too long. At home, I went through the motions. I made dinner. I washed clothes. I sent emails. But everything was off kilter. My husband asked if I was getting sick. My younger son kept looking at me too long, like he couldn't quite place the difference. I even caught myself snapping at the dog for nothing. At night, I'd lie awake and replay every second of what happened, not just the physical parts, the way his voice broke when he said my name, the way he whispered I didn't think I'd ever get to feel this. I hated that it wasn't just about lust. I hated that it was real. I tried to justify it to myself. He's an adult. I'm not his teacher anymore. It wasn't planned. We didn't hurt anyone. It was a moment, but I couldn't keep lying, because it wasn't a moment, it was a wound. And I kept scratching at it like it might heal if I opened it wide enough. The guilt showed up in weird ways. I flinched when my husband touched my back one morning. I forgot my best friend's birthday. I skipped church for the first time in a year. I didn't want to be around anyone who might see it on me, this thing I was carrying, this ache. And the worst part, I kept thinking about doing it again. I kept thinking about his hands, his breath, his weight, the way he trembled but didn't stop. That night I found one of his old emails from when he was in school, thanking me for helping him pass his final paper. He'd signed it, "I owe you." I stared at that line for a long time, because now I owed him something. Clarity, distance, an end. But I didn't reach out, because I didn't trust myself not to ruin him further. The next time we saw each other was accidental. A friend of the family was having a barbecue, and he showed up late. I didn't know he was invited. I didn't know how to breathe when I saw him standing across the lawn, wearing the same look I probably had on my face, panic, longing restraint. He didn't come near me. He stayed in his lane. But near the end of the night we crossed paths near the drinks table. He didn't say hello, just looked at me. I said, "You shouldn't be here." He said, "I didn't know you would be." A beat passed. Then, "You look tired." "I haven't been sleeping," I said too fast. He nodded. "Me neither." I opened my mouth to say more, but he beat me to it. "I think about you all the time." "Don't," I said, voice too soft. "I'm trying not to." Another beat. Then before I could stop myself, I whispered, "I don't know if I want to stop, or if I just want to stop hating myself for not." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew we were past the point of pretending. It happened on a Tuesday. Plain. Forgettable. I was in the kitchen wiping the inside of a cabinet when my husband stepped in from the garage. He stood there watching me. I turned. "What, you've been quiet lately?" I froze. "I've been tired." He nodded slowly. "Ryan texted me. Said thanks for letting him stay. Said he's settled in now." "Okay." "He also said he hopes you're doing all right. That you looked kind of worn out." My stomach dropped. "Did something happen?" he asked. I swallowed. "No." Did something almost happen? The question hung in the air, still and sharp. I didn't speak. He looked at me too long, and then without another word walked away. That night I sat at the edge of our bed, knees pressed together, hands in my lap. I couldn't stop shaking. He hadn't accused me. He hadn't yelled. He had just looked. And that was worse, because he knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not the moment, but the silence between us had changed shape, and he felt it. And I'd always said I could live with guilt. I lied. I checked my phone. No message from Ryan. I told myself that was good. It was what we needed. Distance. Finality. Space to mend what I'd broken. But I didn't sleep again. I didn't eat dinner. I sat on the floor of the guest room, empty now, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the corner where I had once held him after he whispered my name like it cost him something to say it. The next morning I sent one message: "We can't do this again." He responded an hour later: "I know. I wouldn't survive it." And that was the end of it. He didn't reach out again. He unfollowed me on everything. He erased himself clean. But the silence he left behind stayed loud. Weeks passed, then a month. I functioned. I smiled. I looked my husband in the eye when I had to. I made dinner, folded sheets, answered emails, but I didn't feel real. Then one evening I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. The handwriting was shaky, too familiar. "I'm sorry, not for what we did, but for what it did to you. You gave me something I didn't think I deserved. I'll carry it forever, and I hope part of you will too." I held the note for a long time before tearing it in half and tucking it behind a drawer. Not in the trash, just out of sight. The next time I saw him, it was in passing. A local cafe. He was walking with someone his age, pretty, soft around the edges. He didn't see me, but I saw the way he laughed, and I saw the way he didn't carry the weight anymore. Not like I did. I told myself I was happy for him, that he should move on, that I wanted him to. But that night I stood in the shower too long, let the water scald, pressed my forehead to the tile, and bit back something that wasn't quite tears. Because even now I remember the way he shook the first time. I remember how I taught him again with my hands, with my voice, with the rhythm of something I should have denied. I remember not pulling away. And I remember what it cost me. I've lived with guilt before, over small things, over forgotten birthdays, harsh words, distant moments in my marriage. I should have tried harder to fix, but not like this. Not when it tasted like comfort. Not when it made me feel more alive than I had in years. He was never mine to want, but I did. And he wanted me too. And for one night I let that truth matter more than everything else. Maybe that makes me weak. Maybe it just makes me human. But I taught him once, and when he shook inside me, I didn't pull away. And I'll carry that with me, quietly, always.